All right, let's take a look at the Arizona Cardinals and see what did they do over the 2018 off season. Well, first let's look at how much cap space they had. They had about $22 million at the beginning of the off season, and they still have about $11.6 million as of August. But, just enough to maybe sign a couple of depth players. Maybe if a guy gets cut in the preseason or the end of the preseason, they'll scoop him up if they need, if they think they need him or they think that he's a good value. But about $11.6 million left. Before we go through the guys that last year contributed but were free agents, I want to discuss the possible cuts. The guys that weren't free agents but I thought were at risk of being cut in order to increase that cap space. Adrian Peterson is the first name that came to mind. The reason being, number one, he didn't have a great year last year. It was not terrible. He had 448 yards in 6 games. He had at least one really good game. But overall, he averaged 70-something yards a game, 3.5 yards a carry. He only had 2 touchdowns. For a guy who was going to have $2.8 million in salary next year, and they didn't have to have any dead cap, it made it pretty clear cut that they should probably move on from Adrian Peterson. So far, no one has brought him in, so that may be the end to his likely Hall of Fame career. I'd imagine he's going to make the Hall of Fame. He tore his right meniscus in the second game of 2016. But then he came back for one more game there at the end. But last year just didn't have the same ability that he did, back in 2015. Jared Veldheer was another player who was a free agent. Wasn't good on the left side and wasn't that good on the right side either, to be honest with you. So Arizona said, hey, look, rather than pay this guy $6.9 million, let's trade him to Denver, who's pretty desperate for some help at tackle, and decided to move on. So Jared Veldheer won't be back after being traded to Denver. Now, as for the offensive players who are unrestricted free agents, Blaine Gabbert was a free agent. He was not good at all. 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 55.6% completion. Just very, very poor. Drew Stanton, also very, very, very poor. 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 49. Didn't even complete half of his passes. But yet, still managed to somehow get work. Go figure that. Hasn't completed 50% of his passes since 2014. That guy, I don't know what kind of magic he has. He is got some Jedi mind trick. Yes, you do want me to sign with you. But then again, look, I don't know if he's going to make Cleveland's roster, right? Because you know that Tyrod Taylor is going to start. You know that Baker Mayfield is going to be number 2. Do they keep Drew Stanton around to be number 3? Maybe, but I don't know why they would. But Blaine Gabbert is going to be in Tennessee backing up Marcus Mariota. At running back, Kerwin Williams was a free agent. He was a guy who was coming off a 2-year deal that averaged $555,000 per season. He signed a 1-year, $790,000 deal with Kansas City. I just can't understand. Kerwin Williams, he had good yards per carry from 2014 to 2016. Okay? but he didn't get a lot of touches. Last year he played in 16 games. He had 426 yards, which was a career high, but he only had 3.6 yards a carry, and no one has signed Orleans Darkwa yet. I don't know what his agent was demanding. I mean, Kerwin Williams are only giving him 7, but I don't even know if Kerwin Williams is going to make the final roster in Kansas City. They've got a few other guys competing there for one of those backup spots. At tight end, Troy Nicholas was a free agent. Wow, that was a swing and a miss for the Cardinals. Drafted in the 2nd round. I was rooting for the guy, okay? I'm a big Notre Dame fan, huge Notre Dame fan, but it's just pitiful. He had 11 catches for 132 yards, and that was almost 100 more yards than he had ever had before. So that is definitely far short of what they expected when they drafted him in the 2nd round. But somehow he managed to get a $940,000 deal with New England. So there's that. At wide receiver, Jaron Brown was a free agent. You can see that most of the Cardinals free agents, they let them go. 477 yards on 31 catches and 4 touchdowns. It was the best season of his career. He was playing on a 1-year, $1.9 million deal, but managed to get a 2-year, $5.5 million deal with Seattle after having that good season, nearly getting 500 yards receiving. John Brown, you can look at his numbers on the right, finished his rookie contract after being drafted in the 3rd round. He had 1,000 yards receiving back in 2015 with 7 touchdowns. Then in 2016, he had 500 yards receiving. But last year had the worst season of his career. Missed 6 games. He had quad injury, toe injury, back injury, and only had 299 yards. But still managed to get a 1-year, $5 million deal with Baltimore. I guess they figure, before last season, he had never missed more than 1 game in a year. And they think he can put up big numbers again. So we'll see how that works out for Baltimore. But he won't be back with Arizona. A lot of turnover for Arizona. At guard, Alex Boone played on a 1-year deal worth $900,000. He filled in for Mike Iapati, who was injured. Alex Boone is 30 years old. He performed all right, but doesn't appear to have found work thus far. Earl Watford is also a free agent. Arizona also let him walk. He signed with Chicago for 1 year and $1.25 million. He'll be a backup player there. On the defense, Frosty Rucker. Strong against the run. Will turn 35 at the beginning of next season. That is not young at all for an NFL player. He played on a 1-year deal worth a little over $1 million. But he did well. He had 29 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 5 tackles for a loss. He still got it, man. And Oakland brought him in for 1 year and a little more than $1 million. So now their defensive tackle room is pretty full. So I don't, it's not a guarantee that he'll make the roster. But Frosty Rucker won't be back with Arizona, but he's still got a little bit left in his tank, it seems. Carlos Dansby is another free agent, but another old guy. Arizona had a really old roster. 36 years old inside linebacker. You can see he had huge numbers for many, many, many years. I mean, if you look from 2007, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, in the last 11 years, he's averaged over 100 yards a season. Now, like I said, there was, 4 seasons he had in the 90s, 97, 95, 93. But overall, over 11 years, he averaged 100 tackles per year. Solid. But his effectiveness is starting to fall off. He had 5 tackles for loss last year, which is really the least he's had since 2010 actually. No forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, 1 interception, 4 passes defended. Just he's starting to fall off, which is what you'd expect for a guy who's 36 years old. But he still led the team in tackles. I'm surprised, frankly, that no one has picked him up. I know he's old, but still a very, very solid player. Kareem Martin, decent linebacker, backup linebacker, had 24 tackles, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception, 3 passes defended, 2 tackles for a loss. Pretty good for a backup guy. But it was also the best season of his career. Was drafted in the 3rd round by Arizona back in 2014. So he's finishing up his rookie contract. And the Giants needed some 3-4 linebackers. Actually, the defensive coordinator there in New York is going to be Arizona's defensive coordinator from last season, if I'm not mistaken. Because New York has a new head coach, and they brought him over. So New York signed Kareem Martin 3 years, $15 million. Not bad. And I think Arizona is switching to a 4-3 as well, so it was natural there'd be a lot of turnover on Arizona's defense. Josh Bynes, another linebacker who is a free agent. He was a backup, will be 29 years old, but he had 39 tackles last year. Performed pretty well as a backup. In fact, last year he played on a 1-year, $775,000 deal. Next year, or over the offseason, he signed a 3-year, $10 million deal to return. So that's really good for a 29-year-old backup linebacker to get a 3-year, $10 million deal. Solid. Josh Bynes will be back with Arizona. At cornerback, Tramon Williams is gone. He had 12 passes defended, played pretty well. I mean, he's old. He's 34 years old. That for a cornerback, that's pretty old. But he played pretty well opposite of Patrick Peterson. And he played extremely well for a guy that played on a 1-year, $2 million deal. Very solid value for Arizona. That was a good pickup for Arizona last offseason. But he signed a 2-year, $10 million deal with Green Bay. So he got a big raise and will be making an average of $5 million a year there in Green Bay. Green Bay's got he'll be the veteran for sure among a whole class of very young cornerbacks. I like that move, actually, though, to be honest with you. Get a bunch of young guys, bring in a veteran, can teach them, but Tramon Williams won't be back with Arizona. Justin Bethel will also be gone. He was a kind of a backup corner he was like your number 3, number 4 corner. He had 42 tackles, 4 passes defended, and a pick 6. But he was coming off a contract that paid him $15 million over 3 years, and frankly, he definitely underperformed for that kind of contract. He'll be 28. He spent his whole career in Arizona, but he'll be off to Atlanta next year, where he got 1 year and $1.75 million. So he's taking a big pay cut there in Atlanta. At safety, Tyvon Branch was a free agent. Had 69 tackles, was the starter there, but tore his ACL. Very unlucky for a 31-year-old safety, particularly one on a team that had just spent a 2nd-round pick on a safety. So Buda Baker will probably be jumping into that role. And Tyvon Branch will likely not be back in Arizona. He played the last couple of years on a 2-year deal worth $4 million a season. I mean, look, 69 tackles is pretty good, for a guy who didn't even finish the season. But for a 31-year-old safety coming off an ACL injury, might be tough to find work. It's a tough market out there for safeties this year. Let's summarize the changes in the Cardinals roster from last season to this coming season. At quarterback, Carson Palmer, done. Retired. He had 4,000 yards in 2012, 2013, 2015, and 2016. He almost had 2,000 yards in 7 games, but then went down with an injury. And he's decided to hang it up. So it's sad to see Carson Palmer end, to see his career end that way, but Arizona had to find a new quarterback. Blaine Gabbert, Drew Stanton, both gone. So a whole new quarterback room there in Arizona. And who did they bring in? They brought in Sam Bradford. So I like this move. We'll see how it works out. They brought in Sam Bradford and Mike Glennon. I don't know if I like that move, but they brought in Sam Bradford and they drafted Josh Rosen in the first round. So you go, okay, we'll have a bridge year where we will put Bradford out there this year. He's a guy who had 3,800 yards as recently as 2016, 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 71% completion. He looked great in the 2 games that he was in. He had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 74% completion. So he was playing at a very, very high level, but the guy just struggles with injuries. He missed all of 2014, missed more than half of 2013, missed most of 2017. So, but he got $20 million guaranteed. So there you go. So Sam Bradford will look to be the starter there in Arizona. But we'll see if Josh Rosen can beat him out. But a whole new quarterback room there in Arizona. At running back, Adrian Peterson out. Andre Ellington is out. I think he left mid-year. Kerwin Williams is out. Chris Johnson is out. A lot of players out at running back. So what's the situation at running back? How are you going to replace all that depth? Well, they drafted Chase Edmonds in the 4th round. And then David Johnson will be back. He had a huge 2016. He was like the Todd Gurley of 2016. He had 1,200 yards rushing, 16 rushing touchdowns, 879 yards receiving, and 4 receiving touchdowns, but dislocated his wrist last year. I'm a big David Johnson fan. I hope he can stay healthy. That would be huge for Arizona. I mean, shoot, if Sam Bradford can stay healthy and David Johnson can stay healthy, it could be maybe an interesting year in Arizona. There's Andre Ellington's number. They were awesome. You can see that. 3.5 yards a carry while in Arizona. In 2016, he had 2.8 yards a carry. Then when he went to Houston for 4 games, he had 0.4 yards a carry. I'd say Andre Ellington is done. At wide receiver, Jaron Brown is out. John Brown is also out. My goodness, that's a lot of Browns. And Britton Golden is out. So the number 2 and number 4 wide receivers are out. How are you going to replace those guys? Well, you brought in Christian Kirk in the 2nd round. I will be interested to see how he does his rookie season. I think over the long term, Christian Kirk could work out well. Will he be able to put up 477 yards in his rookie year? I don't know. We'll see. And Bryce Butler, I like Bryce Butler actually. I kind of like that pick. You can see his numbers there at the bottom. There's John Brown to the left. Had a huge season in 2015. Didn't play all that great and was injured last season. And then when you look at Bryce Butler, he had 300 yards, but on 15 catches. He has got some wheels on him. He can stretch the field And he was playing a backup role behind Des Bryant and Cole Beasley and those guys, Jason Witten. So he was really like the fourth or fifth option for the Cowboys. They also have another wide receiver, and the name slips to the top of my head, but they've got a few really big-time wide receivers there. So he just wasn't even close to one of the top options. So I don't know. Sam Bradford, he might, between Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk, Bryce Butler, it'll be an interesting season on offense for the Arizona Cardinals. Troy Nicholas is out, but he never did anything anyway, and Gabe Holmes is in. But he has literally done nothing. He has had no career catches. So that shouldn't be what you're going to bank on at tight end. At tackle, Jared Veldier is out. He didn't play all that well. Andre Smith is in. That'll be interesting to watch. He was a swing tackle last year. Played all right. And Arizona gave him 2 years and $8 million. So that'll be one to keep an eye on. And Corey Cunningham was drafted in the 7th round. At guard, Alex Boone is out. He was a starter. Earl Watford is out. He was one of the first guys off the bench. But they brought in Justin Pugh, and that will be an interesting one to watch as well. They gave Justin Pugh 5 years and $45 million and $20 million guaranteed. Wow, I don't know. If he can stay healthy, it's still a lot of money. $9 million a year. It's an upgrade, but he's got to stay on the field. It was a seller's market in the offensive line this season. My gosh, I tell you what, if you were even a halfway decent offensive lineman, you were going to get paid. Center Mason Cole, they drafted him in the 3rd round. He can play guard or center, so that'll be interesting to see if he wins a starting job. And they also brought in Josh Allen to provide some depth. Defensive end, Frosty Rucker. Starter, gone. Justin Morrow, rotational lineman, gone. Xavier Williams, gone. But, it kind of makes sense with them switching to more of a 4-3 system. But Rucker was really good last year. 29 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 5 tackles for a loss. Morrow had 22 tackles. In 2016, he had 32 tackles and 7 for a loss. Xavier Williams had one of the best years of his career. 20 tackles. That's a lot of depth. And who did they bring in? They brought in Benson Mayowa. He had 21 tackles for Dallas last year. The year before, he had 25 tackles and 6 sacks. So they're hoping he can bring back some of that 2016 juice. It's going to be really interesting to see how does the Cardinals defense transition if they play a lot more 4-3 this season. At linebacker, Carlos Dansby is out. I'm really surprised no one has picked him up. Kareem Martin, a backup linebacker, also out. He was decent as a backup, had 24 tackles, sack, forced fumble, interception, 3 passes defended, couple tackles for a loss. It was the best year of his career after being drafted by Arizona in the 3rd round. Who is in? Jeremy Cash is in. He was a reserve player. Edmund Robinson's in. He was a reserve player. And Arthur Moats is in. And I don't think any of those guys had tackles last year. So that is pretty much a downgrade both on the defensive line and linebacker. At cornerback, Tramon Williams is out. He went to Green Bay. He played well, but he's old. He's 35 years old, so I can understand Arizona not wanting to give him 2 years and $10 million. That makes sense. Justin Bethel is out. He went to Atlanta. He was, Bethel was benched anyway at corner. And then Harlan Miller is also out. He was a reserve player. Arizona brought in Jamar Taylor. They traded for the Browns corner. That's probably a good move. Ben Wakira, they brought him in. He started in Carolina in 2015. 4 games in 2016 before getting cut. I don't know. Lewis Young, Christian Campbell in the 6th round. Lewis Young didn't even play last year in 2017. And then at safety, Tyrann Mathieu is out. That's huge. You can see his numbers at the bottom of the screen. Still had 78 tackles last year. Still had 7 passes defended. Yeah, it's not the 5 interceptions and 17 passes defended that he had, in 2015, but he was still a quality player. And Tyvon Branch was also a good player. He was 31 years old, but he had 69 tackles and 6 passes defended before tearing his ACL. And those guys aren't going to do it. But I will say this is a good pickup for the Cardinals. And they played it really, really well. Trey Boston, I couldn't believe no one had picked up Trey Boston. He had a really, really good year last year with the Chargers. And just no one had picked him up. And Arizona got him for super cheap. It was like 1 year, and I don't know, maybe less than $2 million. I don't remember the exact number. But that's a really, really good pickup for Arizona. But I still don't look at that and say they upgraded at safety. Not really. Is he going to be better than Tyrann Mathieu? Really? When I look at what was done on defense, I'd be really worried if I was a Cardinals fan. I'd be worried about the players they lost at safety. Losing Trayvon Williams. I don't know. Jamar Taylor, that could be fine. But linebacker, they lost a lot of guys at linebacker, especially Carlos Dansby. Kareem Martin is a loss. On the defensive line, I know they're making that transition, so there's going to be a change there, but lost some players on the defensive line. I will be very, very curious to see how does Arizona put this defense together. I think it's going to be a rebuilding year for Arizona. I can't imagine it not being a building year. I can't imagine them having a better team than the Rams and the 49ers. It could be a tough year, and I'm a Cardinals fan actually. It's not my number one team. They're like one of my kind of, secondary teams. Because I lived in Arizona for 3 years actually. I lived in Phoenix, up in North Phoenix, near. How can I explain where it was? It was just very North Phoenix. I don't even remember the name of the street now. And then for 2 years I lived in Tempe. Near the ASU campus. I did my MBA in ASU. So look, I love the Cardinals. I do. I like them. I'd love to see them do well. But I just don't see... they have to have a lot of things go right on offense that I don't know if they will. And even if they do, I don't know what in the world they're going to do on defense. So I really see this as a rebuilding year. And they have a whole new system, whole new quarterback room, new coaches... the long run, hopefully it'll work out. I'd love to see Arizona make the playoffs, regularly, but I don't think it's going to be this year, folks. If you like this video, please click subscribe, because we are going to have some great videos in the coming weeks. At the end of the preseason, we're going to preview the final rosters of all 32 teams. And then each week we're going to both review the previous week's games as well as preview the upcoming week's games. So you don't want to miss it, because we are going to have some of the best coverage of the NFL on YouTube. So make sure to click subscribe. Thank you.